Darling, you need to be very careful because not everyone who smiles at you truly wishes you well. Darling, you need to be very careful, for the world is full of hands that reach for you only to break you. Darling, you need to be very careful because sometimes the ones who whisper love are the same ones who poison your peace. Darling, you need to be very careful, for the gentlest words can hide the sharpest knives. Darling, you need to be very careful because love without honesty is nothing more than betrayal in disguise. Darling, you need to be very careful because the loudest applause often comes from those who secretly envy your light. Darling, you need to be very careful because not every heart that beats for you beats with truth. Darling, you need to be very careful, for some people want your presence, but not your happiness. Darling, you need to be very careful because even love can turn into a weapon in the wrong hands. Darling, you need to be very careful, for silence often carries truths that words cannot reveal. Darling, you need to be very careful because the wrong person can turn your soft soul into stone. Darling, you need to be very careful because some wounds are carved deeper by those you trusted most. Darling, you need to be very careful, for temptation often wears the mask of affection. Darling, you need to be very careful because sometimes love is nothing but a beautiful lie dressed as forever. Darling, you need to be very careful, for not every goodbye is spoken with honesty. Darling, you need to be very careful because what your heart desires might also be what breaks it. Darling, you need to be very careful because forgiveness doesn't mean you should invite the same hurt again. Darling, you need to be very careful because the past has a way of knocking on your door when you least expect it. Darling, you need to be very careful, for jealousy hides behind laughter more often than you think. Darling, you need to be very careful because not every secret shared deserves your silence in return. Darling, you need to be very careful because sometimes the biggest danger lies in ignoring your own intuition. Darling, you need to be very careful because not all love stories are written to end with peace. Darling, you need to be very careful, for betrayal doesn't always come loudly. It comes dressed in care. Darling, you need to be very careful because even family can wear the mask of strangers. Darling, you need to be very careful because the world feeds on the vulnerability of soft hearts. Darling, you need to be very careful, for the person you defend today may be the one who abandons you tomorrow. Darling, you need to be very careful because love without effort is just a promise without roots. Darling, you need to be very careful because sometimes the greatest storms are born from the smallest doubts. Darling, you need to be very careful because your silence can be mistaken for weakness. Darling, you need to be very careful because love can blind you to the truth standing right in front of you. Darling, you need to be very careful because apologies don't erase the wounds they created. Darling, you need to be very careful because sometimes letting go is safer than holding on. Darling, you need to be very careful because even angels fall when they love the wrong soul. Darling, you need to be very careful, for every secret you guard is a weapon in someone else's hands. Darling, you need to be very careful because trust is the most fragile currency of the heart. Darling, you need to be very careful because not everyone deserves the softness you carry inside. Darling, you need to be very careful because desire can disguise itself as destiny. Darling, you need to be very careful, for not every confession is meant to heal. Darling, you need to be very careful because some souls are only meant to teach you how to survive loss. Darling, you need to be very careful because loneliness can trick you into embracing the wrong arms. Darling, you need to be very careful, for some people offer comfort only to steal your strength. Darling, you need to be very careful because love that drains you isn't love, it's bondage. Darling, you need to be very careful because beauty can blind you to the darkness beneath. Darling, you need to be very careful because secrets whispered in love can echo as weapons in hate. Darling, you need to be very careful because some people are chapters, not the whole book. Darling, you need to be very careful because obsession often dresses as devotion. Darling, you need to be very careful because not every goodbye is as final as it seems. Darling, you need to be very careful, for the one who holds your hand may also hold your undoing. Darling, you need to be very careful because time reveals truths that love once blinded you from seeing. Darling, you need to be very careful because some hearts are trained to love you only to break you later. Darling, you need to be very careful, for even the brightest smiles can hide the darkest intentions. Darling, you need to be very careful because sometimes the people you trust most are the ones who betray you silently. Darling, you need to be very careful because love can make you blind to the cracks beneath the surface. Darling, you need to be very careful, for those who flatter you may also be the ones plotting against you. Darling, you need to be very careful because the softest words can carry the heaviest chains. Darling, you need to be very careful, for desire without discernment often leads to regret. Darling, you need to be very careful because not everyone who says forever truly means it. Darling, you need to be very careful because trust once broken leaves scars no apology can erase. Darling, you need to be very careful, for the ones who tempt you with closeness may also push you away in silence. Darling, you need to be very careful because appearances can mislead and charm can disguise cruelty. Darling, you need to be very careful, for even the purest intentions can be twisted by hidden agendas. Darling, you need to be very careful because love without boundaries often turns into sorrow. Darling, you need to be very careful because the sweetest touch can hide the sharpest betrayal. Darling, you need to be very careful, for the wrong soul can make your safest place feel dangerous. Darling, you need to be very careful because every promise carries weight, and some are meant to break you. Darling, you need to be very careful, for not everyone who enters your life deserves a space in your heart. Darling, you need to be very careful because words spoken in passion can wound more than weapons. Darling, you need to be very careful, for some people are storms disguised as rainbows. Darling, you need to be very careful because hearts are fragile and the world is reckless. Darling, you need to be very careful, for some smiles are masks hiding envy, not affection. Darling, you need to be very careful because even love can become a trap if you ignore the signs. Darling, you need to be very careful, for obsession often pretends to be devotion. Darling, you need to be very careful because silence sometimes speaks louder than words, revealing hidden truths. Darling, you need to be very careful, for not everyone who says, I care, truly does. Darling, you need to be very careful because the most beautiful illusions often hide the harshest realities. Darling, you need to be very careful, for your heart can be stolen by someone who never truly values it. Darling, you need to be very careful because some connections are meant to teach pain, not love. Darling, you need to be very careful, for the same person who inspires you today may haunt you tomorrow. Darling, you need to be very careful because temptation is patient and it waits for the moment you let your guard down. Darling, you need to be very careful, for some people feed on your kindness while leaving scars behind. Darling, you need to be very careful because not every compliment carries truth and not every touch carries love. Darling, you need to be very careful, for even familiar faces can betray when shadows guide them. Darling, you need to be very careful because those who promise everything can leave you with nothing. Darling, you need to be very careful, for the quietest people can have the loudest schemes. Darling, you need to be very careful because the heart remembers every cut, even if the lips forgive. Darling, you need to be very careful, for love that consumes without balance becomes destruction. Darling, you need to be very careful because some souls are predators disguised in warmth. Darling, you need to be very careful, for even the one who kisses your scars may deepen them in secret. Darling, you need to be very careful because freedom in love is safer than chains disguised as care. Darling, you need to be very careful, for trust is fragile and lies are patient hunters. Darling, you need to be very careful because desire can blind the senses and awaken dangers. Darling, you need to be very careful, for words once said cannot be unsaid, and wounds cannot always heal. Darling, you need to be very careful, because the same eyes that adore you can turn cold without warning. Darling, you need to be very careful, for hearts are not meant to be toys for the reckless. Darling, you need to be very careful, because love should feel safe, not like walking on broken glass. Darling, you need to be very careful, for some souls only teach the art of heartbreak. Darling, you need to be very careful because vulnerability is beautiful but dangerous in the wrong hands. Darling, you need to be very careful, for the sweetest words can sometimes be the cruelest lies.